It's not about what I want. It's about what's fair! You thought we could be decent men in an indecent time. But you were wrong. The world is cruel, and the only morality in a cruel world is chance. Unbiased, unprejudiced, fair.
Most, if not all, Christians agree in the fact that this world is a dark place. Not only is there opposition to God in Satan, but there is opposition to God within people as well, Christians and non-Christians. Every person has within them a baked-in nature that is sinful and fallen. But just because most Christians would agree that there is darkness or there is evil in the world, that does not necessarily mean that every Christian knows how to handle this darkness or handle the reality of this darkness in their life. There have in fact been many professing Christians who have completely given up on the faith because they didn't know how to justify the reality of darkness with the reality of God and His gospel and His light. One major issue I would say that Christians can run into when trying to understand the dichotomy of how light and darkness work together in the Christian life and in this world that God has made is the problem of perfectionism. Perfectionism in a Christian's life can be a very deadly thing because the reality of it is that everyone sins, everyone messes up, everyone fails. And so for a perfectionist, the reality that they themselves fail when they want to be perfect or when they think they need to be perfect for God, that can really instigate an intense battle within the person. There are really two detrimental paths that a perfectionist Christian could go down. The first path is something like this. Say you have a Christian who is very perfectionistic, meaning they desperately do not want to fail because they see the commandments, they see the moral guidelines in the Bible, and they think, I need to hold to these 100% or I'm a failure. And of course they can't do that. They fail in one or multiple ways. So in an attempt to make themselves feel better about their failure, they go into denial. They lie to themselves and they say, no, I'm really not a bad person. I really don't mess up that much, or these really aren't that bad of failures. And then they lie to other people. They don't bring their failures to other people to see how they could better themselves. They bury them, they push them down, they hide them because they're ashamed of them and they don't want to acknowledge them. So they go into denial with regard to themselves and they become liars with regard to everybody else. And this is the perfect recipe for a hypocrite. A hypocrite teaches one thing, preaches one thing, says one thing, and does another. So they're perfectionistic. They'll preach a perfectionistic message, but in reality they know they're not perfect and they don't want to live up to that fact. The second road a perfectionistic person could go down is they could be very honest with themselves and be very honest with other people and say, I know that I can never live up to the moral standards that God has placed before me, and so I'm just not even going to try. I'm not going to bother because I know I can't do it. It's a helpless matter. It's a hopeless situation. Like I said, it's very dangerous for a Christian to be perfectionistic because the reality of the Christian life is that no one is perfect. In fact, one of the tremendously wonderful things about Christianity is that the key requirement from God is for you to know Him. And as long as you desire to know God and seek to fulfill that desire, your life, your morality, your conduct will start to fall into the proper place as time goes on. So rest in the fact that perfect morality is not the standard for Christianity. The key requirement from God is for you to know Him. The second pitfall that Christians can fall into when trying to understand the dynamic between darkness and light, evil and good, is the omission of God from hard circumstances. What I mean by that is that there are those Christians who see the world divided perfectly between God and Satan. So they see everything good and comfortable and joyful. They see that as being of God, and they see everything that is painful and uncomfortable and tragic as being of Satan. And there's no room for God to cross over and work in these situations. If I as a Christian am unable to understand that God can work in tragic situations, that God can turn tragic events and painful events for the good of those who love him, as it says in Romans 8:28. And if I can't see that, that opens me up to a world of uncertainty and a world of hurt. Because how many times in your life have you been in situations where it felt as though evil was winning, or it felt as though horrible circumstances were overtaking you? If you attribute those horrible circumstances or that pain completely to Satan and don't see that God can work in those circumstances too, then it's a hopeless situation. It seems as though Satan has won and God is powerless. The extreme effects of that kind of belief would be a loss of confidence in God, or the development of a nihilistic mindset saying, well, I guess this is the way it is. Faith and God have failed me, so I guess I'll just discard that and live under the guide of unbiased chance. In order for a Christian to maintain confidence in God and not end up in a tailspin going down into a spiral of nihilism, they need to realize that God does indeed work in situations which are painful, which are uncomfortable, which seem to be horrifying and terrible in the moment. Whether God causes these events or whether he simply works in them, that's a discussion for another time. But the important thing is that God is in those situations bringing about the good for those who love him. God is active in every kind of situation imaginable, and that ought to be a tremendous comfort. The interplay of darkness and light, of good and evil in the Christian life can be a hard thing to grasp. It can be a mysterious thing. But what I want you to take away from this video is, one, if you are a perfectionistic person, you have to realize that failure is not incompatible with the Christian experience. It is, in fact, part of the Christian experience. And two, no matter the situation, no matter how hopeless times in your life may seem, God is at work. He can work in the good and in the bad. It is my hope and prayer that if you are in a hopeless time in your life, you'd be able to say this. This comes from Micah 7, verse 8. Do not rejoice over me, O my enemy. Though I fall, I will rise. Though I dwell in darkness, the Lord is a light for me. I will bear the indignation of the Lord, because I have sinned against him, until he pleads my case and executes justice for me. He will bring me out to the light, and I will see his righteousness.
Sometimes I feel like Harvey Dent with two faces, reminded death is a choice that's only a flip away of a coin, and I'm tired of flipping like birds in a gym.